What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. So now we're getting into chapter 16, and still not really any indication of how long they are into the wilderness wandering, but I would assume not very. So they were just given all these commands related to offerings, and then a couple other just like quick rules or regulations that they were given as well regarding other things. So it seems like things are going to get a little bit interesting here in chapter 16 given the heading there. So let's hop right into it. Numbers chapter 16. One day, Korah, son of Izhar, a descendant of Kohath, son of Levi, conspired with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, from the tribe of Reuben. They incited a rebellion against Moses, along with 250 other leaders of the community, all prominent members of the assembly. They united against Moses and Aaron and said, "You have gone too far. The whole community of Israel has been set apart by the Lord, and he is with all of us. What right do you have to act as though you are greater than the rest of the Lord's people?" Oh, yeah, because having that complaint went so well before, when literally Aaron and Miriam specifically made that complaint, and God, briefly gave Miriam leprosy just as a sign that that wasn't okay. But yeah, I'm not sure I understand why the questioning, and especially stuff like this is so prominent. Maybe it's just because the rest of the people don't necessarily like how things are going. Maybe they don't like all these rules that they're being told, or other circumstances that seem to keep coming up over and over again. They never really seem to be very satisfied with the state of things. But, or at least not for long, they don't seem to be satisfied. But anyway, I digress. So people are rebelling. Leaders even in the community are rebelling against Moses and Aaron. Then we get to verse 4. When Moses heard what they were saying, he fell face down on the ground. Then he said to Korah and his followers, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show us who belongs to him and who is holy. The Lord will allow only those whom he selects to enter his own presence. Korah, you and all your followers must prepare your incense burners. Light fires in them tomorrow and burn incense before the Lord. Then we will see whom the Lord chooses as his Holy One. You Levites are the ones who have gone too far." Oh yeah, so that's the thing. Korah and these other folk were Levites who were commanded specifically to help carry out the duties of the priests in the tabernacle. Maybe because they had a little bit more power than just the general community of Israel, they thought maybe they had, a higher standing or more favor with God, and or some sort of right to question, Moses and Aaron's authority. But Moses is basically saying, okay, you want to see who God deems to be the true leader? Let's put it to the test. Y'all get incense and whatever ready, what's supposed to be burned in front of the Lord, and God will determine who gets to enter his presence and live. Also, footnote right here, Greek version reads, "God has visited and knows those who are his," instead of The Lord will show us who belongs to him and who is holy, I guess. So anyway, it's still, I take that to be a relatively similar understanding. So anyway, verse 8. Then Moses spoke again to Korah. Now listen, you Levites. Does it seem insignificant to you that the God of Israel has chosen you from among all the community of Israel to be near him so you can serve in the Lord's tabernacle and stand before the people to minister to them? Korah, he has already given this special ministry to you and your fellow Levites. Are you now demanding the priesthood as well? The Lord is the one you and your followers are really revolting against. For who is Aaron that you are complaining about him? So, Moses is reminding them of the position that they already have, which is a somewhat privileged position, but also should be one that's living up to higher standards and is more so resembling, God's will and work among the people than just the common Israelites. But this part where he says, who is Aaron that you were complaining about him? I think that's meant to be taken more as Aaron's just serving the Lord. God put him in this position. He didn't choose it for himself. Aaron's not trying to puff himself up or anything like that. This was God's design and will. So, really, you're not rebelling against Aaron or I. You're rebelling against God, because God is the one who put us in these positions. So anyway, verse 12. Then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. But they replied, we refuse to come before you. Isn't it enough that you brought us out of Egypt, a land flowing with milk and honey, to kill us here in this wilderness, and that you now treat us like your subjects? What's more, you haven't brought us into another land flowing with milk and honey. You haven't given us a new homeland with fields and vineyards. Are you trying to fool these men? We will not come. So, this makes it seem, in a way, like the rebellion against Moses and Aaron has to do with just the general displeasure over the state of things. They're dissatisfied that they haven't actually been led into the promised land. It might even feel worse to them in a way, almost like they got teased, so to speak, because they were right there at the edge of the promised land, but then didn't get to go in. And they might think their complaint is with Moses because Moses was the one who told the people they can't enter the promised land, but he was just telling them what God said to him to tell them. But because of their dissatisfaction with that, that might be why they're sort of questioning, Moses and Aaron's leadership. Because they're thinking, we were supposed to go to a good land, flowing with milk and honey. That hasn't happened. We were right there, but we weren't allowed to go into it. Why? We disagree with your leadership. We think we should be going elsewhere. Footnote there. So rather than, are you trying to fool these men, the original Hebrew might have read, are you trying to put out the eyes of these men? Sounds akin to the phrase, pulling the wool over someone's eyes. Just, similar meaning, though, trying to fool someone make them blind to the truth. Okay. So then, verse 15. Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not accept their grain offerings. I have not taken so much as a donkey from them, and I have never hurt a single one of them." And Moses said to Korah, "You and all your followers must come here tomorrow and present yourselves before the Lord. Aaron will also be here. You and each of your 250 followers must prepare an incense burner and put incense on it, so you can all present them before the Lord. Aaron will also bring his incense burner." So each of these men prepared an incense burner, lit the fire, and placed incense on it. Then they all stood at the entrance of the tabernacle with Moses and Aaron. Meanwhile, Korah had stirred up the entire community against Moses and Aaron, and they all gathered at the tabernacle entrance. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to the whole community, and the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Get away from all these people so that I may instantly destroy them." Again, with the just instantaneous destruction that God threatens on the people. This is like the third or fourth time now, at least. It's... You get the feeling God's kind of sick of their crap, so to speak. Like, they complained about the lack of meat in the wilderness. They are complaining now, supposedly, about, Moses and Aaron's leadership, even though God's the one who placed them in those positions. They didn't, Moses and Aaron didn't try and, lord it over them, or anything to that effect. So anyway, I guess they're about to kind of engage in this test to see who God shows favor on. Footnote there just says tent of meeting. Again, might be a closer translation of the original Hebrew instead of tabernacle. But, same meaning there. And so Korah has stirred up some trouble. And I wonder if this is going to be a moment of, once again, the broader community getting to see God's will in this situation. But we'll just have to read on and see what happens. Verse 22. But Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground. "O God," they pleaded, "you are the one who gives breath to all creatures. Must you be angry with all the people when only one man sins?" And the Lord said to Moses, "Then tell all the people to get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." So Moses got up and rushed over to the tents of Dathan and Abiram, followed by the elders of Israel. "Quick," he told the people, "get away from the tents of these wicked men, and don't touch anything that belongs to them. If you do, you will be destroyed for their sins." So all the people stood back from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the entrances of their tents, together with their wives and children and little ones. Okay, pause there real quick. So Moses and Aaron basically said to God, "Why are you going to punish everybody for the sins of just a few?" They actually even said just one. But, there's more than just one person kind of leading the charge, so to speak, in this rebellion. Therefore, God's like, okay, fine, but the people who are in charge of this rebellion, I can't have this. They need to die, at least. So, getting everybody away from the tents of those people, and then we'll see what happens from there. Verse 28. And Moses said, This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these things that I have done. For I have not done them on my own. If these men die a natural death, or if nothing unusual happens, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord does something entirely new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them and all their belongings, and they go down alive into the grave, then you will know that these men have shown contempt for the Lord. And I find it interesting that he says an entirely new thing. I mean, that indeed hadn't happened yet. So it's like Moses is basically saying, okay, you want to know that this is from God? Let's have something completely unheard of happen. But God could do these things. So if that happens, you'll know it's God. Because why in the world else would that happen? Footnote there. Hebrew says into Sheol rather than into the grave. Which, that's a whole nother long and detailed discussion. But just know that Sheol was commonly referred to as, the pit. It was basically thought of as just an eternal nothingness. Generally, underground. Which is probably why it says into the grave here in this translation. But yeah, it was just kind of an eternal nothingness in the ground that at the time was sort of the belief of the Israelites in terms of any kind of possible afterlife scenario. It's just like, well, when you die, you're placed in the ground, so that's where you go. I mean, like, you're just in the ground there. I'm kind of oversimplifying that, but that's somewhat the general gist of it. But, forgive me for the simplification. Okay. So then we get to verse 31. He, I assume meaning Moses, he had hardly finished speaking the words when the ground suddenly split open beneath them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men, along with their households and all their followers who were standing with them, and everything they owned. So they went down alive into the grave, along with all their belongings. The earth closed over them, and they all vanished from among the people of Israel. All the people around them fled when they heard their screams. The earth will swallow us too, they cried. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord, and burned up the 250 men who were offering incense. Okay, so I guess anybody that was in the direct vicinity of the tents in question got swallowed up, which suddenly made everybody else worried that it was going to happen to them too. And then any of the rebellious men who weren't swallowed up by the earth got consumed by fire. So, yeah, kinda doesn't leave much room for questioning whether that was an act of the Lord or not. Okay. So then, verse 36. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, to pull all the incense burners from the fire, for they are holy. Also tell him to scatter the burning coals. Take the incense burners of these men who have sinned at the cost of their lives, and hammer the metal into a thin sheet to overlay the altar. Since the burners were used in the Lord's presence, they have become holy. Let them serve as a warning to the people of Israel." So, So God still deems the incense burners as holy because they were used to offer incense before the Lord. So in order to have them still serve a better purpose, they got turned into something to go as an outer layer of the altar. And remember, the whole, earth swallowing and all that kind of stuff was supposed to be the sign that Moses was, in fact, chosen by God to lead the people, and that the other men were the ones rebelling. Footnote here, verses 36 to 50 are numbered 17, 1 through 15 in the Hebrew text. So, in the original writings, this was a whole new chapter. Interesting. Again, I'm not totally sure what the reasons are for, separating them at one spot versus another. But this seems very much related to all the previous events. So, because it's specifically talking about the incense burners that, the other men used, who then got swallowed up by the fire. So, to me, it makes sense to have that included in this chapter. But anyway, then verse 39. So Eleazar the priest collected the 250 bronze incense burners that had been used by the men who died in the fire, and the bronze was hammered into a thin sheet to overlay the altar. This would warn the Israelites that no unauthorized person, no one who was not a descendant of Aaron, should ever enter the Lord's presence to burn incense. If anyone did, the same thing would happen to him as happened to Korah and his followers. So the Lord's instructions to Moses were carried out. But the very next morning, the whole community of Israel began muttering again against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the Lord's people." As the community gathered to protest against Moses and Aaron, they turned toward the tabernacle and saw that the cloud had covered it, and the glorious presence of the Lord appeared. Okay, so, at some point you wonder, how many different, signs and reminders do these people need? But again, by name, they were going to wrestle with God. That's what the name Israel means. But this overlay on the altar was apparently supposed to serve as a warning about, only certain people being allowed to enter God's presence. But people are still rebelling because it's like, well, great, now more people have died. The things aren't going well, so they think. But then the clouds over the tabernacle, and then we get to verse 43. Moses and Aaron came and stood in front of the tabernacle, and the Lord said to Moses, "Get away from all these people so that I can instantly destroy them." But Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground. Again, with the instant destruction. That's twice in this chapter now. Anyway. And Moses and let me start that over. And Moses said to Aaron, "Quick, take an incense burner and place burning coals on it from the altar. Lay incense on it and carry it out among the people to purify them and make them right with the Lord. The Lord's anger is blazing against them. The plague has already begun." Aaron did as Moses told him and ran out among the people. The plague had already begun to strike down the people, but Aaron burned the incense and purified the people. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people died in that plague, in addition to those who had died in the affair involving Korah. Then, because the plague had stopped, Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tabernacle. So, I'm not totally sure what this plague was. It gives no indication of it, but it had to be something that acted quickly, because, like, and I do wonder if it was, a bit based on proximity or the way that the air was or something, given the fact that, God wanted Moses to back away from the rest of the people. But, Moses basically tells Aaron, hey, if we don't want to just have all the people die, we need to do something to purify them. So go and get some incense like you would for making the offerings, and that will at least be, a sign of purification among the people. So, yeah, then the plan works. Most of the people are saved, but still quite a few died. And again, all just because of people rebelling against Moses and Aaron in their leadership. Footnote there, make atonement. Footnote there, make atonement. Okay. So, yeah, I guess because of, the incense and the burning coals from the tabernacle being deemed holy by God, what came out of those was also deemed holy, which is, I would assume, kind of how that was supposed to help purify the people. At least that's the way that makes the most sense of it to me. But that seems to do it for chapter 16. Okay, so don't rebel against God's leaders unless you're absolutely sure that they are in the wrong. Anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description to get info on other social media pages and all that good stuff. And leave comments below there with any thoughts you have. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.